Back in my youth, when I had a little less gray hair, a few less wrinkles, and a lot fewer toys, I was the brand manager for Masters of the Universe Classics at Mattel, the 6-inch line that was available on Mattycollector. To say this was a dream job was not even scratching the surface. My name is Scott Toy Guru Neitlich. I've been in the toy industry for 20, 25 years. I tend to lose count. Like I said, the mind's going with age. And I loved getting to actually work in the toy industry. And one of the things I understood as a brand manager was the wallet application rule. What this is the concept that everyone has a wallet. I mean, even if it's a, metaphorical wallet, and it holds all their money, metaphorically, and that money has to be divided up into different things they have to pay for. As brand manager of Masters of the Universe Classic, because we had no retail support and no content, the idea was to sort of drive everyone to the same product. In other words, let's say you have a $100 bill, and you have that allocated for HeMan product. Well, as brand manager of MOTU Classics, I want you to spend all $100 of that on Classics. It's why I was very conscious of having other scales, other styles, and even licensing out other MOTU product to other companies like high-end statues and other things because, honestly, my goal, I was a brand manager, was I had to sell toys, and that was my goal. But by the time 2013 rolled around, we started to realize we were kind of hitting the bottom of the barrel as far as character selection. And we saw sales dipping a little bit, especially as we had to raise prices because we hadn't done that in 5 years. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, we were not exactly selling the way we were when we had, HeMan and Skeletor on the rack or on the site. So it was the inevitable time to consider other scales, other ways to sell Masters of the Universe figures, honestly, to make up revenue, because we had certain sales goals we needed to hit. But we also wanted to make product that was going to be appealing to fans. I didn't want to just put out He-Man schlock in any, kind of form factor or scale. I wanted it to be something cool that collectors would like to collect, and hey, maybe even kids would like. Everyone in the toy industry is always looking for the next big thing. I mean, constantly. And over on the other side of the country, in Pawtucket, Hasbro had started making mini, cute versions of action figures, non-articulated, of course, and they were doing really well. They were on fire. They started off as a play school line, which is Hasbro's version of Fisher-Price, if you will, their preschool line. But Lucasfilm actually doesn't want Star Wars preschool product out there because they feel it down-ages the product. So Hasbro's solution to that, since it was selling very well and they didn't want to just stop making it, was to basically just push it into a different aisle, give it a new refresh brand look, new package, and they could take the idea that was selling and continue selling it as long as it wasn't sold in the young child aisle. This was the older child aisle. And it continued to do very well. In fact, it built off quite a huge collection of characters from not just the original trilogy, but it spilled over into the prequel trilogy and Clone Wars and whatever else was being pumped out for Star Wars at the time. In fact, it even had characters that were never done and still haven't been done, like the other Duros from the Cantina. Still waiting for a 3 3/4 one, Hasbro. We only have one of them. Anyway, I was a big fan of these. I thought they were really cool, especially, I didn't buy them all, but, I did especially pick up characters like Tusken Raiders that I really liked. And, of course, success breeds success, so Hasbro was very quick to take this concept and apply it to other licenses they had. So, what was the Galactic Heroes for Star Wars became the Superhero Squad for Marvel. Although there was also an animated series, Superhero Squad. I don't recall which came first. It's like a chicken-egg dinosaur thing. But either way, sold very well. In fact, one of my favorite toys that I own is this Doctor Doom getting ready for breakfast with an anti-Iron Man mug. It just speaks to me. What can I say? I actually really like Doctor Doom. I have a little mini Doctor Doom collection in my office. And again, other brands continuing. So what was Galactic Heroes and Superhero Squad for Indiana Jones during the time Hasbro had the license became Adventure Heroes. And I mean, come on, who doesn't want a super cute Sean Connery holding the Holy Grail in his diary and Indiana Jones with a giant gun? I guess that's a little bit more politically correct than the Mola Ram cute figure holding a human heart. I have this figure too. I mean, come on. You can't just not have a Mola Ram cutified holding a human heart. Anyway, so each toy company on opposite sides of the country is and are constantly looking at what each other are doing. Just look at the 12-inch Titan series that Hasbro did that Mattel quickly followed suit doing the same size. And this was a perfect opportunity. When management asked for a new scale, I brought in my Doctor Doom figure because I happened to have him on my desk at Mattel at the time. And I said, what about this? What if we did sort of super cute versions of He-Man? And it's doing very well at Marvel, or at Hasbro in different brands. And I, passed around my Doctor Doom figure, and management was like, okay, let's do it. But we want them to be a little more action posed. Well, yeah, obviously Doctor Doom was in his bathrobe. So DC Universe got their Action League figures, which had both Battle in the Box as well as superhero team-ups, if you will. Got extra stickers, of course, when it was a team-up. They got the little "and" sticker added. Battle in the Box was always better. Like, again, Batman versus Joker, it sells. So that became Versus. That was the one difference between the team-ups versus the Battle in the Box. But either way, they sold very well. In fact, we did a whole line of them for Green Lantern as well for the movie, which unfortunately didn't do well, but that's a story for another time, and I already made that YouTube video. And these were totally Bill Beneke. Bill loved working on these, designing all of them, because the Horsemen were the ones sculpting DCU Classics, so his chance to design and draw out and create versions of DC characters was so much fun. I remember him just loving working on this line, and you could really see it in the design. WWE also got the super cute look. And see, I've been promising a WWE video. Okay, well, at least they made a cameo in this one. So this became Rumblers. I think actually this may have predated the DC line, if my memory is correct. Again, gray hair, wrinkles, memory loss, too many hits with the snake. But it also did very well. In fact, the Rumblers did so well that they actually got play sets and they got accessories, and it became a larger subline for the WWE line for Mattel than the DC one did. We never got to vehicles or play sets with DC, but hey, WWE is a different audience. All right, so how are we going to do this with He-Man? How do you shrink down the He-Man characters, make them super cute, and still make them cool and not basically eat into the wallet too much of people buying classics? In other words, get them to also buy the minis. Well, we decided to sort of premiere this concept at San Diego Comic-Con with a deluxe Castle Grayskull themed fold-out box with He-Man and Skeletor. Kind of similar to what we did with King Grayskull, except this was He-Man and Skeletor. And hey, it actually sold really well. People liked it. Now, these figures were a lot bigger than the other minis at Hasbro and even that Mattel was doing. But we knew if we released them at that size, there'd be a bit of a price shock. And once we realized this, we had to go back to R&D and ask to borrow their shrinking machine, and we had to make them smaller. We originally made them bigger because He-Man is usually a bigger character than other action figures, but realizing the sticker shock of what we would have had to price them at retail, they got shrunk. It was a solution. Was it the greatest solution? It kind of meant that the original He-Man and Skeletor figures were now one-offs because there'd be no other figures in that scale, but hey, that's kind of what happened. So the new figures were now going to be in an assortment and sold on Mattycollector, again because retail had no interest in the brand because 2000X underperformed, and they were all going to come with a piece of a Castle Grayskull, like a Build-A-Figure. This was a Build-A-Castle, or a Collect and Connect Castle, if you will, with the TM and copyright. It was a way to try to sell through the whole line and get people to buy all 6 sets, because if you did, you could build up, and now you could have a little mini Castle Grayskull with figures could stand on the turrets and the jaw bridge, opened and closed and opened. And, it was fun. What can I say? One of the honor packs that came out in this first assortment was King He-Man and Clawful. You might be like, yeah, that's kind of obscure. Why would you put King He-Man in there? That's because this was supposed to be tied into the larger Fall of Eternia storyline that was being developed. The only way this actually got out, though, was in the MOTU Classics mini-comics, where Skeletor's look was shown. He was going to have a ram's helmet, and it was supposed to be a whole, giant kind of Shadows of the Empire thing, like everything but a movie. But unfortunately, it fell apart, but a few toys snuck out, like the King He-Man. And because toys definitely do not come without a sense of irony, later on, this design for Skeletor wound up being used in Masters of the Universe Revelation, and a minifigure was done of this version of Skeletor. I think Skelegod he's called. So maybe just kind of pretend that this figure here came in the 2-pack with King He-Man. That was what the original intention was. Once the Fall of Eternia storyline fell apart, Clawful got put in the pack. I don't exactly remember why. I think he was just available and they got teamed up. Who knows? Now, a second year was planned, and it had expanded figures. It had our first She-Ra characters as well, the Trooper and She-Ra. It had Buzz-Off. It had Mechaneck. Lots of cool figures. Trapjaw. And we put it up. It was going to have a build-up of Snake Mountain, which you can see in the background. And we really pushed them hard. We showed them off at San Diego Comic-Con. We showed them in print ads, or ads that got shared on social media to show how cool they were. All the figures coming with at least 2 accessories. And unfortunately, in year 1, sales just didn't hit. The year 1 figures just didn't sell. They didn't meet expectations. And when something like that happens, well, management pretty much quickly pulls the plug and says, stop everything, we're not doing a year 2. But because toys are designed 3 years in advance, a year 3 was actually planned out. So while the plug was pulled on year 1 and we never got to year 2, year 3 for 2016 was planned, and this was going to build up to a slime pit and even included some new Adventures figures. So, shame. We had a lot of plans for this line. The other interesting thing about the plug being pulled is the first figure for year 2, which was She-Ra and the Horde Trooper, were actually tooled. Because again, you have to work really far ahead. And we were planning for success. I think the phrase was, be set up for success. So the tool was paid in full. And she was ready to go. None of the other figures for year 2 for 2015 were ready. But she would have been the first figure. And a couple years later, the factory that had this tool started cranking out non-licensed, illegal, unpaid-for 2-packs of She-Ra and the Horde Trooper. The packaging was a little bit different. It didn't have all the branding, but they clearly had access to the packaging files, and they had the tool, and Mattel never used it, which is crazy to spend all that money on a tool and never actually produce the figure. The back of the package also used the temp file that was created. This was not meant to be the back of the package, but this is probably all the factory had, so they just assumed. And I have to say, she's actually one of the coolest figures. I am lucky enough to actually own an original Mattel version. When she was tooled, we had PP samples, which were the first samples off the factory to review, and these were definitely things that I had signed out once I left Mattel because, it's cool to have cool souvenirs. So I do have them proudly on my shelf, and a lot of people actually have bought them, but the one difference between the ones you can buy on eBay and these are that these say copyright Mattel on the bottom of the foot. And there's only about 3 or 4 in existence that say that. The rest don't have the copyright. So, hey, that's what happened. Not that uncommon, though. Toys get tooled and developed, like Egon's Lab from the Ghostbusters line from the 80s, or I guess we should be glad that the Princess Leia fashion dolls from the late 70s, early 80s never made it past the prototype stage. And of course, in the Masters of the Universe world, there's Hero, the character from the 87 extension, who probably got tooled, but hey, it happens. Sometimes it happens. It's rare, but sometimes figures get tooled and never released. Now, fast forward to the now, and Mattel decided to bring back the minis for retail, which is absolutely where they belong, because this is a kid-aimed line. I think it would have done very well if it was at retail at the time instead of Matty, but again, retail had no interest in the line because the 2001 2000X line didn't perform. So the new line that Mattel put out a few years ago for minis was in blind boxes, or rather blind castles, I guess, blind headquarters. The bad guys came in Snake Mountain, the good guys came in a Castle Grayskull, little plastic shell, if you will, and you opened it up and inside was your mini. Pretty cool. Blind box concepts are very popular, and you see them with a lot of lines, especially at sort of pharmacies and grocery stores, that kind of thing. So the characters, some of them, they used a lot of the tooling that was originally developed for the Matty line, but some things like new heads were developed, and even repaints were done. A lot of repaints, which is very smart for a retail line. There's a few sort of acceptable repaints for HeMan, such as the Horde Zombie or Slime Pit HeMan that was released in Classics, and I think Super 7 did one in the Reaction line as well. It's great when you can repaint a figure because it doesn't cost anything. You have the tool. Interesting, they also released Anti-Eternia He-Man in the minis. Again, just repainting the existing He-Man sculpt, but now giving him coal black skin, bright red hair, and those eyes make him look a lot more menacing and evil, I think, than the sculpt was intended. Now, again, toys are not without a sense of irony, because doing Anti-Eternia He-Man was a figure that was really a fight to have made because, well, I did a whole video on it, but the bottom line is there were some people in management that thought the figure was racist. I don't understand why, because obviously there's no human being that has coal black skin, red hair, and beady red eyes, but what can I say? There was a big pushback on doing it. And again, ironically, now Mattel is using the anti-Eternia deco to apply to all of the characters, or lots of the characters and lots of the tools. You can see a whole anti-Eternia assortment there at the bottom left with Ram Man, Tila, and Man-at-Arms also getting the coal black skin, red hair treatment, red eyes. So, hey, cool. I mean, honestly, it's great that there's an acceptable deco to put on figures that's an alternate deco because it's way better for toy companies when they can do that. Now, you can see the Matty version on the left and the retail version on the right. There were differences, new heads, way less paint, way less paint. The Matty ones enjoyed that. And while the first year enjoyed the whole blind box in a castle or a mountain, if you will, and the third year was planned to come in a slime pit, ironically, because the slime pit was going to be part of 2016, well, the cost of doing this wound up being a little bit too much. So, between retail being out on the blind box concept from a shelf point of view, a planogram, the castles, mountain, slime pits, little cases that contained the figure were eliminated, and the figures were now going to be available in another way. One of the other contributing factors was that fans had cracked the code and figured out what figure was in each package based on a letter that was next to the barcode on the bottom, or maybe not next to the barcode, but it was in the fine print. And this not only allowed fans to pick the blind boxes and know who they were getting, it actually led to a little bit of theft. So the figures were now re-released on blister cards, which is a lot less expensive, especially because they could eliminate the cost of the hard clamshell, which is more expensive than a blister. Still considered part of the package, but now they could also get rid of the box, which is the sort of on shelf that has all the figures in it. MOTU Revelation, the Netflix show, also got a line of minis, and now there's even vehicles that have come out for it. So it's a very kid-friendly line. Anytime you can get figures and vehicles together, that's an excellent formula for success with kids. And I'm excited. I love that this line is finding a new home, and it should be at retail. I wish we were able to release it at retail in the first place. But it's great to see it thrive. It's great to see so many more characters. It's great to see some of the tooling from the original Matty line winding up getting used. And, I wish it all the best. I hope this line continues for so long. And just to think, this awesome line all started because I happened to have a Dr. Doom in his bathrobe sitting on my desk at Mattel. Stranger things have happened, but not that many. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think, and the best way you can support this channel is by sharing it and reposting it, because it's great to share fun toy knowledge and history and information. Leave a comment below. I read them all. I comment back as many as I can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.